I'm Emily, 32, and my 8th wedding anniversary turned into the night I uncovered the true nature of my husband, David. We were celebrating at an upscale restaurant, the Grand Oak, with his family when his behavior raised red flags. When I returned early from the restroom, I saw him slip something into my wine glass. In that moment, I made a choice that saved my life but revealed a chilling truth. If you've ever felt that nagging instinct that something was wrong in your relationship, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe. My story might just save your life. David and I met at a tech conference in San Francisco 10 years ago. I was presenting a project on AI-driven analytics while he was there representing his venture capital firm. Our eyes locked across the crowded room during my presentation, and I noticed him nodding thoughtfully at my key points. Later at the networking mixer, he approached me with 2 glasses of wine and a compliment about my insights on data trends that showed he'd actually been listening. "Your approach to predictive modeling was brilliant," he said, his green eyes sparkling when he smiled. "Most people in that room didn't fully grasp what you were saying, but I did." That first conversation lasted 3 hours. Long after the mixer had ended, David was charming, eloquent, and seemed genuinely interested in my ideas. By the end of the conference weekend, we'd exchanged numbers and made plans for dinner when we returned to Seattle, where we both lived, yet had never crossed paths. Our romance was a whirlwind, electrifying. David took me to exclusive bistros, surprised me with weekend escapes to the San Juan Islands, and remembered small details about things I loved. 6 months into dating, he proposed at dusk on a private yacht in Puget Sound with the city skyline shimmering behind us. The ring was white gold with a perfect sapphire that caught every ray of light. I said yes without hesitation. Our wedding was everything I dreamed of. A sophisticated affair at the Seattle Art Museum with 200 guests. David's parents, William and Margaret Thornton, spared no expense. They were old money from Bainbridge Island. While they were always courteous to me, I sensed they thought their son could have chosen someone from their elite circle instead of a self-made data scientist whose parents were librarians from Eastern Washington. But it was David's sister, Claire, who made her disapproval most apparent. Even at our wedding, she found ways to subtly undermine me, commenting that my dress was almost as stunning as her friend's recent bridal gown, or loudly reminiscing about David's ex-girlfriend, Lauren, who unfortunately couldn't make it, but sent her best wishes. Despite these undercurrents, the early years of our marriage were blissful. We bought a sleek condo in Belltown, traveled the world, and built what I thought was a partnership of equals. David's career in venture capital soared, and my analytics startup landed major clients. We talked about starting a family someday, but we were savoring our life together too much to rush. The first warning signs crept in so slowly, I barely noticed. David began questioning my spending despite my substantial income. He suggested I merge my separate accounts into our joint ones for convenience. When I declined, valuing my financial independence, he sulked for days. He started commenting on my late nights at the office, implying I was neglecting our marriage for my career. "I just want more time with my beautiful wife," he would say, wrapping his arms around me. Is that so wrong, framed that way? His behavior seemed like loving concern rather than control. So, I began coming home earlier, skipping business trips, and declining evening tech meetups. Gradually, I saw less of my grad school friends. My weekly calls with my parents grew shorter as David frequently interrupted with household questions or dinner plans. By our 5th anniversary, my world had shrunk significantly. I maintained my career, but my social circle consisted mainly of David's colleagues and their spouses, most of whom seemed to exist as extensions of their husband's success. My close friend Rachel tried to point this out during a rare coffee meetup when David was out of town. "I hardly see you anymore, she said, concern in her eyes. "And when I do, you're always checking your phone like you're afraid to miss his call." I brushed off her concerns, insisting I was happily in love and that David was just attentive. But her words planted a seed of doubt I couldn't fully ignore. In the months leading up to our 8th anniversary, David's behavior grew erratic. He took secretive phone calls in the garage, claimed to be working late but returned home without his laptop and smelling of unfamiliar cologne, and became obsessively protective of his phone. When I asked innocent questions, he turned them around, accusing me of not trusting him or being paranoid. Still, I held on to hope that we could recapture what we once had. When David suggested a special anniversary dinner with his family at the Grand Oak, an upscale restaurant, I was touched. Perhaps he was trying to reconnect and celebrate our milestone properly. I spent the day of our anniversary preparing, with a spa treatment, hair styled in loose curls, and a new emerald green dress that flattered my figure. As I applied my makeup, I studied my reflection, wondering if tonight could be a turning point. Maybe the distance I'd felt growing between us would close. Maybe Claire would finally be kind to me. Maybe we could start anew. If only I'd known what the evening would bring. The Grand Oak exuded timeless elegance with its dark wood paneling, pristine tablecloths, and soft glow from chandeliers. Our reserved table was in a private nook with views of Pike Place Market, perfectly set for 6. When David and I arrived, the maitre d' escorted us with practiced grace, pulling out my chair with a flourish. "You look breathtaking," David whispered, his hand at the small of my back. For a moment, I felt that familiar spark from our early days. His navy suit was perfectly tailored, and he wore the watch I'd given him for his birthday. Perhaps tonight would be special after all. The hopeful mood lasted about 7 minutes until Claire arrived with her husband, Ethan. She air-kissed my cheeks, her lips never touching my skin, before embracing David warmly. "Happy anniversary to my favorite brother," she gushed, ignoring that he was her only brother. She wore a dazzling gold dress that likely cost more than my car payment. Her auburn hair was styled in an elegant chignon that made my curls seem ordinary by comparison. "Emily," she acknowledged finally, her eyes scanning my outfit. "Green again. You do stick with what works, don't you?" The comment came with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Ethan, always uneasy with his wife's behavior, shook David's hand and gave me a warm hug. "You look beautiful, Em," he said kindly. "Happy anniversary." William and Margaret Thornton arrived moments later, impeccably dressed and precisely on time. William's gray hair and commanding presence turned heads even in this upscale venue. Margaret's diamond necklace and tailored dress spoke of inherited wealth and meticulous care. 8 years, Margaret said, patting my hand with cool fingers adorned with heirloom rings. "How time flies." The sommelier approached with perfect timing, and David took charge. "We'll have the Chateau Petrus," he announced without glancing at the wine list. "The 2010 vintage if you have it." "Excellent choice, sir." The sommelier nodded. I raised an eyebrow at David. The wine he'd chosen cost over $600 a bottle. While we were financially comfortable, such extravagance was unusual for him lately. He'd complained about my much smaller clothing purchase just last week. "It's a special occasion," he said, catching my look. "Only the best for our 8th. Claire leaned forward, adjusting her napkin. "So, Emily, is your little analytics startup still crunching numbers for local tech firms?" "How quaint." I forced a smile. "Actually, we just signed Horizon Tech as a client last month. We're handling their entire data strategy overhaul." David cut in before Claire could respond. "Emily, you never mentioned Horizon to me." "I did. Actually, 3 times, I said lightly, despite the tension in my shoulders. "Remember, I told you when I pitched them, when we made the final round, and when we got the contract." David frowned, then covered it with a laugh. "Well, congratulations then. I've been so busy with the Meridian deal, it must have slipped my mind." The wine arrived with ceremony, 6 crystal glasses on a silver tray. The sommelier poured a taste for David, who nodded approval after a cursory sip. As our glasses were filled, I noticed David checking his watch for the 3rd time since we sat down. "Are you expecting a call?" I asked. "No, just keeping track of time. I arranged a special dessert for later," he replied smoothly, raising his glass. "To 8 years with my beautiful wife." Everyone echoed the toast, and I took a small sip of the exquisite wine. The flavors were rich, but I couldn't fully enjoy it. Something felt off about David's demeanor, a tightness in his jaw, a slight shake in his hand. As the appetizers arrived, crab cakes for me, carpaccio for David. He grew insistent about my wine consumption. "You've barely touched your drink," he noted, gesturing to my nearly full glass. "Don't you like it?" "It's delicious," I said. "I'm just pacing myself. You know wine goes straight to my head." "But it's our anniversary," he pressed, his tone light but his eyes intense. "Live a little," Claire chimed in. "Yes, Emily. Do loosen up. You're always so cautious." Their combined pressure unsettled me. I excused myself to the restroom, needing a moment to clear my head. The marble bathroom was blissfully empty. I leaned against the cool countertop, staring at my reflection in the ornate mirror. Who was this woman looking back at me? I looked polished on the outside, but inside, I felt hollow. When had my marriage become a performance? When had I started tiptoeing around my own husband? My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "How's the anniversary dinner going? Still on for Coffee Tuesday?" I realized I hadn't responded to her last 3 texts. David had been monopolizing my evenings, always with some excuse for why I couldn't meet her. I typed back quickly. "It's fine. Yes for Tuesday. Miss you." Taking a deep breath, I reapplied my lipstick and squared my shoulders. I could get through this dinner. Tomorrow, I'd think seriously about my marriage. But tonight, I'd play my part. I had no idea that in minutes, everything would change. I left the restroom and paused near the bar to check a work email that had just pinged. That's when I glanced up and saw something that froze my blood. Through a gap between the bartender and a server, I had a clear view of our table. David was hunched forward, his back to me, focused on something in his hand. In one swift, practiced motion, he dropped something into my wine glass and gave it a subtle swirl. The tiny object dissolved instantly, leaving no trace in the deep red liquid. I froze, my mind struggling to process what I'd just seen. My husband had drugged my drink. The reality was so shocking that for several seconds, I stood there, my body cold despite the restaurant's warmth. A server passed by, briefly blocking my view. I slipped behind a decorative column, out of sight from our table. My heart pounded, and my breathing came in short, panicked gasps. I pressed my back against the cool surface, trying to steady myself. Had I really seen that? Could there be an innocent explanation? Maybe a surprise toast with some harmless addition, but the furtive way he'd looked around, the speed of his movement, the way he'd checked his watch all evening, none of it suggested innocence. Suddenly, other incidents clicked into place. 3 weeks ago, I'd woken up groggy after David insisted I take a sleeping pill for insomnia I'd never had. I'd lost nearly 12 hours and couldn't recall going to bed. He dismissed it, saying I was probably just exhausted from work. Last month, after dinner at home, I'd felt dizzy and nauseous. David had been attentive, helping me to bed, saying it was likely a stomach bug. The next morning, I found my mother's bracelet missing from my jewelry box. I'd worn it the previous evening, but David suggested I'd misplaced it. And just last week, after he made me a special anniversary countdown cocktail, I woke to find him scrolling through my phone, claiming he was checking for a surprise he'd planned. Each incident seemed harmless alone, but together they formed a terrifying pattern. My husband had been drugging me, but why I struggled to think through the panic clouding my mind. I couldn't confront him here, surrounded by his family. They'd never believe me over him. Claire would probably say I was having a breakdown. I needed evidence and safety. A plan formed, imperfect and risky. But my only option, taking a deep breath. I composed my face and returned to the table. "Sorry for the delay," I said, sliding into my seat with a forced smile. "I ran into Sarah from book club. You remember her, don't you?" "David." He nodded vaguely, but I caught the relief in his eyes when I sat down. His gaze darted to my still full wine glass. "Your wine's getting warm," he said casually. "Should we get you a fresh one?" "No, this is fine," I replied, reaching for it but not drinking. I don't want to waste such expensive wine. My eyes landed on Claire's glass. She'd barely touched her wine, preferring the Pinot Noir she'd ordered separately. Her glass sat nearly full beside mine, the red liquid identical. As the main courses arrived, filet mignon for David, salmon for me, I orchestrated my move while everyone was distracted by their dishes' presentation. I reached for the breadbasket and accidentally knocked over Claire's water glass. "Oh, I'm so sorry," I exclaimed as water spilled toward her dress. As she jumped up and attention focused on the chaos. I switched our wine glasses in less than 3 seconds. "No harm done," William said as servers rushed over with napkins. "Missed the dress completely." Claire settled back with a huff, dabbing at her dress. "Really, Emily, be more careful." "You're right," I agreed, my heart racing but my voice steady. "So clumsy of me." David lifted his glass. "Why don't we have another toast to many more years together?" Everyone raised their glasses. I brought the untainted wine to my lips, pretending to sip while watching David. His eyes were fixed on me, an intensity I now saw as anticipation, not affection. "Drink up," he urged with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It's exceptional wine." "It is," Claire agreed, taking a deep swallow from my drugged glass. "Though I still prefer the Pinot." I set my glass down, continuing the charade of sipping while engaging in conversation. David grew agitated, his eyes darting between me and my nearly full glass. "Are you feeling okay?" he asked, an edge in his voice. "You seem distracted." "I'm fine," I assured him, forcing myself to eat a bite of salmon despite my churning stomach, just savoring our special night. I was actually watching Claire, counting the minutes, praying whatever David had put in my drink wouldn't harm her too badly. 20 minutes into the main course, Claire's behavior changed. Her words slurred slightly, and she interrupted her father with an uncharacteristic laugh. Margaret shot her a disapproving glance while Ethan looked confused. "Are you okay, Claire?" he asked quietly. "I'm perfectly fine," she replied, her voice too loud for the elegant setting. "Just celebrating my brother's happy marriage." She made exaggerated air quotes around happy, then giggled. David's face paled. He stared at his sister, then at me, his eyes narrowing as realization hit. I met his gaze steadily, letting him know I knew what he'd done. A cold, dangerous look crossed his face before he composed himself. "Claire," Margaret hissed. "Control yourself. People are looking." Nearby diners glanced over as Claire's behavior grew erratic. She swayed in her seat, her coordination impaired. "I don't feel so good," she mumbled, knocking over her water glass again. The room's spinning. While attention focused on Claire, I discreetly started recording audio on my phone under the table. I needed evidence. "Perhaps you've had enough wine," William suggested, reaching for her Pinot. "I barely had any wine," Claire protested, her words slurring. "Just the Petrus, David's fancy anniversary wine." She turned to me, her eyes struggling to focus. "You didn't drink yours." "Smart girl, always so careful," David intervened. "Claire isn't feeling well. Ethan, take her outside for some air." "She needs more than air," Ethan said, concern in his voice as Claire slumped against him. "Her pupils are dilated and she's burning up. This isn't just alcohol." Margaret touched Claire's forehead. "She does have a fever. Did she take any medication today?" Nothing, Ethan replied, growing worried. She was fine before dinner. Under the table, I switched to camera mode, capturing David's panicked expression as Claire's condition worsened. His leg bounced nervously, and he kept checking his watch. Maybe we should call a doctor, I suggested, my voice conveying concern while hiding what I knew. Claire lurched forward, nearly collapsing into her plate. I'm going to be sick, she slurred. Ethan caught her before she slid off her chair. That's it. I'm calling 911, he said, pulling out his phone. Is that necessary? David interjected quickly. It's probably just a bad reaction to the alcohol. William's expression hardened. My daughter doesn't collapse from one glass of wine. David, something's wrong. As if on cue, Claire began convulsing, her body going rigid then trembling violently. The restaurant buzzed with concern as Ethan lowered her to the floor, turning her on her side. She's having a seizure, Margaret cried, her composure breaking. Someone help. A woman from a nearby table rushed over. I'm a doctor, she said, kneeling beside Claire. Has she taken any drugs or medications? Nothing, Ethan insisted. She was fine before dinner. I maintained a facade of distress while continuing to record. David backed away from the table, his face ashen, eyes darting toward the exit. I positioned myself between him and the door, pretending to make room for the crowd. I should call the manager, I said loudly, then slipped toward the entrance. Instead of the manager, I approached the security guard, a former cop named Liam. Per his name tag, my sister-in-law collapsed, I said breathlessly. I think my husband drugged her drink. It was meant for me. Do you have cameras covering our table? Liam assessed me quickly. We do. Section B, Table 10. That's us. Please, I need to see the footage from the past hour. It's life or death. Something in my expression convinced him. Come with me, he said, leading me to a security office. On the monitors, we found our table and rewound the footage. There it was, clear as day, David tampering with my drink. Liam's expression hardened. I'm calling this in, he said, reaching for his radio. Paramedics are on their way for your sister-in-law, but we need police too. Thank you, I whispered, my composure cracking as the reality hit. Back in the dining room, paramedics were loading Claire onto a stretcher. She was stable but unconscious. Margaret wept quietly while William demanded answers from the staff. Ethan prepared to follow the paramedics to the hospital, and David stood alone, his world crumbling. The restaurant was in controlled chaos. Diners watched with concern and curiosity as Claire was wheeled out, an oxygen mask on her face. Ethan followed, clutching her purse and phone. I'll meet you at Harborview, Margaret called, gathering her things. She turned to David and me, tears streaking her face. We should go too. Family sticks together in crisis. I noticed David inching toward the exit before he could move. 2 police officers entered with Liam. Their stride toward our table was purposeful. David Thornton, the female officer asked, her hand near her holster. David straightened, slipping into his charming persona. Yes, that's me. Is this about my sister? We're heading to the hospital. Sir, we need to ask you some questions first, the male officer said. We have reason to believe a criminal act occurred tonight. Margaret gasped. What are you talking about? My daughter had a medical episode. What does that have to do with David? Liam stepped forward. Ma'am, we have video evidence that your son tampered with a drink at this table. All eyes turned to David, whose facade cracked briefly before he recovered. This is absurd. I did no such thing. I stepped forward, my voice steady. The drink was meant for me. I saw him put something in my wine when I came back from the restroom. I switched glasses with Claire when no one was looking. I never thought she'd drink it. William's face turned thunderous. What is she talking about? David. She's hysterical. David countered smoothly. Making wild accusations because she's upset about Claire. The female officer, whose nameplate read Detective Harper, turned to me. Ma'am, You're saying you saw your husband put something in your drink and then switched it with someone else's. Put that way. My actions sounded awful. Shame hit me as I realized I'd endangered Claire. Yes, I panicked. I should have confronted him or spilled the drink, but I was scared. I didn't think she'd drink it. We have it on footage, Liam added, both the tampering and the switch. Detective Harper nodded to her partner, who moved beside David. Sir, you need to come to the station for questioning. This is ridiculous, David sputtered, his composure cracking. Emily's making this up. She's been unstable, asking odd questions about our finances, accusing me of affairs. The restaurant manager interjected, holding a plastic bag with a partially dissolved tablet. Our bartender found this in Ms. Thornton's glass. It doesn't belong in wine. David lunged for the evidence, but the male officer restrained him. David Thornton, you're under arrest for attempted assault with a noxious substance. You have the right to remain silent. As the officer read his Miranda rights, Margaret collapsed into a chair, hand over her mouth. William stood frozen, his expression cycling through disbelief, rage, and devastation. Emily, he said, turning to me. Is this true David tried to drug you? I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. The reality of what had almost happened hit me hard. Why? Margaret whispered. Why would he do this? Detective Harper was professional but kind. We'll need statements from everyone. Mrs. Thornton, you'll need to come to the station. We'll also need access to your home for a search. As David was led away in handcuffs, he locked eyes with me. The mask was gone, revealing a coldness I'd never seen. You'll regret this, he said quietly before the officers guided him out. The manager provided a private room where Detective Harper took my statement. I recounted the evening, my growing suspicions, and past incidents that now seemed sinister. Do you know why your husband might want to drug you? She asked. Pen poised. I shook my head. Not for sure, but I recently found he'd taken out a large life insurance policy on me without my knowledge. I found the paperwork while looking for a bank statement. He said it was standard estate planning. Detective Harper's expression stayed neutral, but she underlined something twice. We'll look into that. Is there somewhere safe you can stay tonight? I thought of Rachel. Yes, I have someone I can call. Good. An officer will escort you to collect essentials from your home after our search. Don't go alone. In the quiet room, watching officers gather evidence and take statements, the enormity of what had happened washed over me. My marriage, my safety, my reality had shattered in one evening. My phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. Claire's stable. Doctors say it was Rohypnol, a lot of it. Keeping her overnight. What's going on, Emily? I stared at the message, unable to explain that my husband had meant to drug me, and I'd inadvertently made Claire the victim. Detective Harper placed a hand on my shoulder. One step at a time, Mrs. Thornton. You're safe now, and that's what matters. But I couldn't feel safe. Not yet. One question haunted me. What had David planned to do once I was unconscious? The next 48 hours were a blur of interviews, evidence collection, and revelations. Detective Morgan, not Harper as I'd thought, became a steady presence, her calm professionalism grounding me as my world unraveled. I stayed with Rachel, who cleared her guest room when I called from the station at midnight, eyes swollen, clutching a small bag. She hugged me, made tea, and sat with me until I could speak. My husband tried to drug me, I whispered. On our anniversary, with his family there. Rachel's expression shifted to fierce protectiveness. You're staying here as long as you need. The next morning, Detective Morgan brought news. The toxicology report confirmed Rohypnol in Claire's system, a dangerously high dose. If she'd finished that wine, Morgan said, she could have stopped breathing. The amount suggests your husband wasn't just trying to incapacitate you. Emily, this was potentially lethal. I pressed my hands to my mouth. Fighting nausea. David hadn't just wanted to drug me, he'd wanted to kill me. We searched your home, Morgan continued. We found sedatives hidden in his office and financial documents you should know about. Those documents revealed David's deception, 3 life insurance policies on me totaling $4 million, and our joint accounts drained, with millions moved to offshore accounts in his name. Even worse was what they found on his laptop and phone. David had been having an affair with his colleague, Olivia, for 18 months. Their texts revealed a chilling plan. "I can't wait to start our new life," Olivia wrote 3 weeks ago. "Once she's gone, the insurance money will set us up," David replied. "Anniversary dinner's the perfect chance. Her death will look like an accident. No one will suspect." When confronted, Olivia turned on David, claiming she thought he meant divorce, not murder. She provided recordings of him planning to drug me, stage an accident, and collect the insurance. For days, I sat in attorney Laura Chen's office, struggling to process. Laura, a specialist in divorce and domestic violence cases, made her office a safe haven. "We're filing an emergency restraining order," she said, sliding documents for my signature, "and expediting divorce on grounds of attempted murder rare in my practice." "What about Claire?" I asked. "Guilt-heavy." "Is she pressing charges for the glass switch?" Laura shook her head. "She wants to meet you. She's out of the hospital, recovering at her parents' home. She asked to speak privately." Facing Claire filled me with dread, but I owed her. The next day, I drove to the Thornton estate in Medina, hands trembling. The modern mansion, with its glass walls and manicured lawns, screamed wealth. Margaret met me at the door, looking worn, no longer the polished matriarch. "Claire's in the conservatory," she said quietly. Before we reached the door, she paused. "Emily, William and I don't blame you. We should have seen what David was becoming. Maybe we did and ignored it." Her raw emotion silenced me. It was the first time she'd spoken to me with genuine feeling. Claire sat in a cushioned chair by the windows, a throw over her lap. Her usual polished look was gone hair in a simple ponytail. No makeup, in sweats and a robe. She looked fragile. "Emily," she said, gesturing to a chair. "Thank you for coming." I sat, unsure what to say. "Claire, I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to drink that glass." I panicked. She raised a hand. "You don't need to apologize. My brother tried to murder you. I got caught in the crossfire. It's horrifying, but not your fault." Her directness stunned me. "Doctors say no permanent damage," she continued, pulling the throw tighter. "Lucky, given the dose?" She shuddered. "Police showed me the texts between David and that woman. They planned your death like a business deal." Tears filled my eyes. "I never saw it coming. Claire, how did I miss who he was?" She gave a bitter smile. "Because he didn't want you to. That's what David does. He shows people what he wants them to see." She paused, then softened. "I enabled it, the way I treated you. I bought into his narrative that you weren't good enough, that you were using our family's connections." "You never liked me," I said, not accusing, just stating fact. "I never knew you," she corrected. "I never tried. I accepted David's version of you. I'm truly sorry." In that moment, something shifted, not forgiveness, but recognition of our shared pain from the man we'd both loved differently. Over weeks, the case against David grew. Detective Morgan updated me evidence of prior poisoning attempts in my hair samples, hidden cameras in our bedroom and bathroom, records of David researching untraceable poisons and natural-looking deaths for women my age. The most chilling find was a timeline in his email drafts, detailing what he planned to do with my body after I passed out a rented cabin in the Cascades under a false name, prepped with plastic sheeting, chemicals, and tools. Through it all, I saw Dr. Ellis, a trauma specialist, in therapy. I grappled with my decade-long marriage. Had any of it been real? Had David ever loved me? Or was I just a mark for a sociopath? "The person you married didn't exist," Dr. Ellis said gently. "You loved a facade. Your grief is real, but you're grieving who you thought he was. 6 months after that dinner, as David awaited trial, denied bail, I had coffee with Claire in a cozy Seattle cafe. Our tentative friendship, born from shared trauma, felt real. Prosecutors say it's airtight, Claire said, stirring her coffee. Video, toxicology, financials, Olivia's testimony he's facing 20 to life. I nodded, still struggling to reconcile the David I loved with the man capable of such evil. I keep wondering if I missed signs, I said. Moments his mask slipped that I ignored. Claire squeezed my hand, a gesture unthinkable a year ago. We both missed him, Emily, because we loved him differently. That's not our failure. It's his betrayal. Sitting there, 2 women rebuilding from one man's wreckage, I realized I'd gained an unexpected sister. Together, we'd ensure David never hurt anyone again. 1 year later, I stood in my new Capitol Hill apartment, watching autumn rain streak the windows. The space was mine, chosen and decorated by me, untouched by David. I'd sold the Belltown condo, unable to stay where hidden cameras had recorded me. Therapy with Dr. Ellis continued bi-weekly. Nightmares were rarer, and I no longer flinched at sudden noises. Small victories. Dr. Ellis called them. That morning, I prepared for David's sentencing. The trial had ended 3 weeks earlier with guilty verdicts: attempted murder, assault with a noxious substance, fraud, conspiracy, and financial crimes. A soft knock announced Claire's arrival. Our friendship had deepened, forged in shared recovery. "Ready?" she asked, nervous but resolute in a simple gray dress. "As I'll ever be," I replied, grabbing my purse and victim impact statement. In the courthouse, we sat in the front row with Rachel and Ethan. William and Margaret submitted written statements, their health, especially William's, battered by David's crimes. When David was let in, orange jumpsuit and handcuffs, I forced myself to look at him. The man I'd loved looked diminished. His eyes met mine briefly before sliding away. The judge, a stern man in his 50s, reviewed the case, then invited me to speak. At the podium, statement in trembling hands, I looked above David's head. "Your Honor, a year ago." I thought I was celebrating love and partnership. Instead, I discovered the depth of betrayal from the person I trusted most. My voice strengthened as I detailed not just that night, but how David isolated me, controlled our finances, and eroded my confidence. The woman who switched those glasses was desperate, acting on instinct. I regret the harm to Claire, but not the actions that saved my life and exposed the truth. I looked at David. "I don't hate you anymore. Hatred would tie me to you. I choose freedom. I pity you. Someone so empty that destroying others became your purpose." Claire's testimony was equally powerful, describing the physical and emotional toll of her brother's cruelty. The judge's sentence was a relief: 30 years. No parole. As David was led away, he looked at us, his wife and sister, united. Whatever he might have said was lost as the door closed, removing him from our lives. Outside, reporters swarmed. Claire delivered our prepared statement. "Today ends a painful chapter. No sentence can undo the trauma David inflicted, but justice has been served. We ask for privacy as we heal." Claire had left her art gallery job to become a victim's advocate. I'd sold my startup and launched Safe Horizons, a nonprofit for survivors of intimate partner abuse. 6 months later, on what would have been our 9th anniversary, I hosted Safe Horizons' headquarters launch in Seattle. Claire and Detective Morgan, now retired and with our team, served on the board, addressing supporters. I reflected on my journey from that desperate night. "When trust shatters, we think we'll never feel safe again," I said. "But we can rebuild stronger, rooted in wisdom." Later, on the rooftop with Claire, watching the city glow, she asked, "Did you think we'd end up here? Friends, fighting the good fight?" I smiled. "Never. But then, I never thought my husband would try to kill me. So my predictions need work. She laughed, raising her sparkling water. To terrible predictions and better realities. We clinked glasses, and I felt peace. The path forward wasn't certain, but I wasn't alone or afraid. David planned to end my story that night. Instead, he gave me a new one, written by me, with chapters yet to come. I faced the skyline, feeling the rain's mist and tomorrow's promise. The most powerful words aren't the ones shouted in crisis, but those we whisper later. I survived. I am free. I am enough. Those words are not just an ending, but a beginning. Have you ever trusted your instincts in a dangerous moment or discovered someone wasn't who you thought? Share your story below. If this resonated, like, subscribe, and share with someone who needs to hear that healing is possible after betrayal. Thank you for hearing my story. Trust your gut. Document everything and never fear rewriting your ending.